All right, Dalton, starting off with the Arizona Wildcats. Head coach Brent Brennan in his first year last year as Arizona's head coach. They weren't as successful as the 2023 season when they went 10-3 and finished number 11 in the final AP poll. That was actually their best season of the 21st century. Jedd Fisch left the program after 2023. Expectations were really high for them entering 2024. In fact, both Dalton and I picked Arizona to win the Big 12 last year because they brought back guys like Noah Fifita and Tedero McMillan and Tacario Davis. All three of those guys were top 10 players in the country at their position. But under a brand new head coach in Brent Brennan, Arizona came crashing back down to earth this past season with only a 4-8 record, their sixth losing season in the last 7 years. Tedero McMillan, who was a top 10 pick in the 2025 draft to the Carolina Panthers, was one of the lone bright spots of the team. He was number 8 overall, like I said, for the Panthers. There's still some optimism for the Wildcats to make a bowl game this year, though, if Noah Fifita can bounce back after what was a rough year last year, and the defense shows significant improvement this year as well. But, Dalton, what is ultimately the biggest strength of the Arizona Wildcats right now?
I think the strength you have is the hope that Fifita can bounce back, because you have to remember there was a lot of controversy about the offensive coordinator position with this team last year. It started out with Dino Babers, and then he got replaced a couple games into the season. And I think one thing that we underestimated when we made those predictions with this team last year was the departure of Jedd Fisch and the impact that he had on Noah Fifita. He had him playing like a top 10 to 12 quarterback in 2023. They got blazing hot down the stretch. Obviously, his chemistry with Tedero and McMillan was there because he'd been playing with him since middle school. So you figured, Fifita could carry that over that momentum with McMillan last year, but the rest of the team and the lack of depth really hurt him. This year, when you look at the hope for Arizona, as always, you look at the quarterback position. If new offensive coordinator Seth Dagey can get Fifita to play like he played in 2023, you suddenly have a much more efficient offense that stands a chance to be efficient and make explosive plays at the same time, even though they're going to have to do it without McMillan. But you have a quarterback in Fifita that you can win ball games with. You just have to unlock that again.
And you added a really good running back in the portal, too. We'll talk about later. And that really should help out Fifita because they didn't have much of a run game last year because Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt only played in one game for some eligibility issues with him, forced him to sit out the rest of the year. So now with a guy like Ismail Mahdi coming in from Texas State, you have a run game now. That takes a lot of the pressure off Noah Fifita's shoulders. But I'm still worried with the secondary, Dalton, in this Arizona defense right now. Last year, Arizona was 112th in coverage grade last year with a 62.8 coverage grade. Making matters worse, two of their best defensive backs, Tacario Davis, the cornerback, and safety Gunnar Maldonado, they both transferred this offseason. So this is one of the, say 30 worst secondaries in the country last year. And they just lost probably their two best defensive backs to the transfer portal. I'm worried about this Arizona secondary right now.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I mean, I'm worried about the entire defense because they really didn't play well on defense last year. Again, it just felt like last year it was Fifita and McMillan trying to carry the rest of the flaws on this team, and that includes a secondary that we thought would play a lot better with the talent than they have. Now you have a couple of those starters gone, and they're reeling to figure it out on defense. But if they do so, maybe you start to add balance back into this team.
All right, so let's talk more about Noah Fifita, who, like you said before, was one of our top 10 quarterbacks in the country heading into last season. Didn't really perform as well this past year, but what should we know about him going into another year?
Look, what Jedd Fisch did 2 years ago was get Fifita to play on time. Now, he's undersized, and he's a solid athlete who can run. He can make plays outside of the pocket. A little bit of that Kyler Murray comparison when you start to talk about how small he is, right? You're talking about a guy who's 5'9", maybe 5'10", and he's a playmaker back there, but Fisch got him to play on time in 2023. Last year, that wasn't the case. He had a top 10 highest average time to throw rate in college football last season, and he was just improvising too much playground football. Need to get back to throwing the ball on time and accurately, and then make the sandlot plays when they're available to you. He's also going to have to figure out, okay, I have to read defenses now instead of just forcing the ball to a guy like Tedero and McMillan. So what you got last year was Fifita under so much pressure to carry this team, trying to improvise, trying to put the Superman cape on and do it too much. This year, Seth Dagey has to get him throwing on time, in rhythm from the pocket, and then they can set up everything outside the pocket when he needs to make those plays when it matters.
Absolutely. Yeah, Noah Fifita, I'm excited to see if he can bounce back next year. Even without his childhood best friend in Tedero McMillan, I still think he could have a bounce back year for the Wildcats. And a big reason why, like I said before, is that a guy in Ismail Mahdi will take some of the pressure off his shoulders. He joins Arizona after 2 outstanding years at Texas State. In fact, he had a 90.5 rushing grade over the last 2 years and 129 rushing first downs or touchdowns over those last 2 years, that's second most among all returning running backs in the country. He is smaller. He's only 5'9", only 188 pounds, but he makes up for really good balance and really good speed. I think Ismail Mahdi is one of the more underrated running backs in the country right now. And we saw before, Dalton, I really think Ja'Cory Crosby-Merritt last year would have made a massive difference in that offense. He unfortunately couldn't play for most of the year, but I think another transfer running back in Ismail Mahdi could make a huge difference next year.
Well, and we remember in 2023, this team had Jonah Coleman and Michael Wiley, a really good pair of running backs that added balance to this team. So last year, you had a team that lost its balance after week 1, right? The defense was struggling. There just wasn't enough complementary pieces and complementary football throughout this roster to support Noah Fifita and Teteroa McMillan, right? The lack of a running game, the lack of defense. Mahdi should be able to bring back at least that first part.
All right, so let's talk more about the star defensive player for Arizona going next year.
Yeah, look, they need to be better up front too, and I think that starts with a guy like Trey Smith, who's a big 6'5", 260-pound power pass rusher, right? He's really their best defensive player, returning 15.5% pass rush win rate last year is really good, and you're talking about, look, yeah, they got to help the secondary, but if all those pieces in the secondary are going to be gone, then they got to be better up front. They got some returners at linebacker, but I think Trey Smith, the outside linebacker, is going to have to make even more of an impact than he did last year. Had a solid impact last year for this team, but as a pass rusher, he needs to take that next step. He's a really good, again, 260-pound run defender, really good there. He takes one more step as a pass rusher, then you start to really think about this Arizona defensive line with him leading the way.
Yeah, definitely. Good run defender, and like you said before, as a pass rusher, top 5 in the Big 12 in pass rush grade and pressures and pass rush win rate last year, and another transfer coming in from San Jose State too. All right, Dalton, their win total is set at 5.5 right now. What is the bottom line for Arizona? And basically that win total says right there, will they make a bowl game or will they miss out once again?
I think that is the question here. You think about, okay, there's a couple out-of-conference games they should win. I like them better than maybe a couple of teams. There's some 50-50 games on this schedule. I'm going to pick them to bounce back and go maybe 6-6.
Okay.
I think there's enough here that, look, I know they've lost some pieces, and last year especially, I think the turmoil in the coaching staff and the offensive coordinator situation really hurt them too, because they just never had an identity between the coaching situation and Crosby-Merritt, obviously only playing one game last year. But I think you're talking about a team that in a very balanced Big 12 should find a way to make a bowl game, or we're really going to have to evaluate what direction this program is going in, right? After a really disciplined, because they should have won a lot more games last year, even with the talent that they had. They should not have been going 4-8. So I'm going to take them. I think 6. I think a bowl game is within range, maybe 6. I think best case scenario, 7 or up to 8 wins if Fifita gets back to the 2023 form. If not, we could see another season like last year. But I'll take him to squeeze into a bowl game, maybe around 6-6.
Well, this is tough.
It is.
This one's a really tough one because I see some games that definitely should win. Obviously, Hawaii, Weber State, they play too. BYU could, with the whole Jake Retzlaff situation, could take a downturn next year. Oklahoma State's gonna be one of the worst teams in the conference.
The fun part about the Big 12 is this every week's gonna feel like all 50-50 games.
Yeah.
Right. These over-unders even that we're gonna be flipping a coin on a lot of them.
I'll go under. I'm gonna go under. I still, Brent Brennan, I wasn't the biggest fan of him when he was hired at Arizona. I didn't really love what he did at San Jose State either. So I'm going to go under for this team right now. I like Noah Fifita. I like some of the pieces they have on that offense. And Trey Smith's a good player on defense. But it is kind of an average schedule in terms of how hard it is for the Big 12. And there's still a lot of good teams on the schedule, too. They got to play like Kansas State. They got to play Arizona State. They got to play Iowa State, Colorado. Yeah, I'll go under for this team next year. I think it'll be probably around a 5-7 year for the Arizona Wildcats. Hey, thanks for watching another episode of the PFF College Football Show. Please make sure you guys subscribe to the channel.
Also, subscribe to PFF Plus at subscribe.pff.com for all of the same data and grades that we use in our show, plus fantasy tools, betting tools, and our mock draft simulator.